Hello, my name is Anna, and I'm an artist living in Honolulu, Hawaii. For today's brief printmaking tutorial, you will learn how to do a single-colored, simple block print. And block printing is the art of printing images onto a surface using an engraved block. Oftentimes this can be a wooden block, but today I will use a lino block. Lino is short for linoleum, and it's a great way to get into block printing and all kinds of carving. It's a sort of beginner-friendly material. And for this print, I decided to showcase a flower that is really special to this place. This is the ilima flower. It's indigenous to Hawaii, and it's also known as the flower of Oahu, which is the island that I'm on. It has medicinal purposes, it can be used for lei, and it's all around just a very stunning yellow flower that we'll be printing in black. I still think it's quite beautiful and look forward to printing this with you and carving this with you today. Here are all the tools that I'll be using. The carving tools that I get to play with today are Schaaf wood carving tools. And although they can be used for wood carving, they're also really great for lino blocks. This set comes in a variety of cuts, some straight edges here. They also have a U-shaped cut. They have V-shaped. And then they have different sizes of those to get either thinner or thicker lines. I'll probably be using these for here, but we'll see what calls to me in the moment. The set also comes with a strop and a stone for honing and sharpening your tools as needed. Like I said, I have a lino block here. I've gotten the Speedball lino block that is really easy and soft to carve. It also is double-sided, so I can use it for multiple images. I will also be using transfer paper to transfer my image to the block. This isn't entirely necessary. You could draw your image right onto the block. I've done that a lot. It works great. I personally like to have the transfer paper if I know I'm going to be sketching something a little bit more complicated and wanting to erase and adjust as I draw it, because if I were to do that directly on the block, it can get a little bit messy with an eraser. I'll also be using a brayer. This will spread the ink onto my glass palette. Isn't necessary. You can use other kinds of palettes like tin foil or cardboard even. I have some other tools, some pens and pencils. I have my printing paper, of course. And finally, I have my black oil-based ink. And this is a really great brand. I like that it's water miscible, meaning that even though it's oil-based, it can be cleaned up with water. I can clean up the mess if I end up making one, which is also why I have a towel. The first step to any printmaking is really the ideation phase. I've already come up with my idea and sketched it out onto transfer paper, but you might want to sketch it out onto another piece of paper entirely before you get the idea solid. I've already cut my transfer paper to match the lino block size. That said, I don't really like where this is placed on the paper, so I think I'm going to transfer it more into the center of the block. Yeah, I think that's good. Now I will apply a pressure to make sure the graphite sticks to the block. Now remember that whatever you're sketching is going to be a mirror image onto the block, and then the block will be a mirror image of what's printed onto your print paper. Because I sketched onto a transfer paper beforehand, whatever I was drawing is the orientation that the final image will be. This is especially important to keep in mind if you are printing words. Okay, let's see if that worked. Okay, that's good enough for me. Now that I have a rough sketch of my image here, I like to go over with Sharpie just to make sure it doesn't disappear and smudge as I carve. The Sharpie thickness is also really good for the thickness of what I'm going for in the actual carving. Now that I have my image traced with Sharpie onto my lino block, I like to spend extra time thinking about what will be printed versus what won't be printed. When it comes to carving, whatever I carve away will not make it onto the paper, whereas whatever I leave behind will be printed. I am opting to have the black be carved away and the leftover pink to be printed. So just to make sure I don't make this mistake, because I have in the past, I like to mark maybe just with a little squiggle where I'll be carving. So I'll be carving all of this pink on the outside, but everything on the inside that's pink will stay, except for these and some spots in between. To start, I like to carve around what I will keep first to make sure that I don't actually cut into it later. It's kind of like a little buffer. Remember, I intentionally colored in the parts that I want to keep or want to remove, and the pink will be what I want to keep. I hold the tool sort of like a little shovel, not like a pencil, more like a little shovel here. And I always orient the tool away from my body or away from my left hand, if I remember. These are really good tools, so they're sharp, and it can be a risk, so hopefully I'm good at sticking to that rule today. So instead of turning my hand, I like to rotate the block so that I can keep my motion going this direction. Another thing to consider is the direction of your cut. They want to keep rolling, don't they? There we go. You want to keep in mind the direction of your cut. I switched tools to the V shape just to give me a little bit more precision on the edges of these smaller lines and curves. I might have to redo some of these. Okay, I'm done with the outside edge. So now, before getting back into the detail, I'm going to use a larger U tool to carve away all of this area that I don't need. This is where I like to keep in mind the direction. You can have these carving lines be a part of your art called noise, and they can be really cool. I think I'm going to opt for removing as much noise as I can, which means I'm going to get deep, but I'll show you in a minute what that looks like. If you do want the strokes of your carving to be part of the image, then you might consider the direction of your strokes, make it part of the art. Maybe if there's something with motion, you could have it indicate motion. Because I'm choosing not to have any noise, I don't really care which direction it is because I hope it'll be gone when it's in the printmaking process. I guess I'll never know until I do the actual printing. At least to start, I'm going to just carve at will. So you see a lot of these streaks have even depths. So we get these troughs and we get peaks, and it's possible that some of these will print if I am too high or if I leave them too high. So like I said, I'm not interested in having that noise. I don't want that stuff to be printed, although I am open to it if it does happen. But I'm going to do my best to remove them, and I think I will try one of these straight edge tools, here it is, to flatten those out. I broke my linoleum. Maybe I'll try the round one. Yeah, maybe that works a little better. Okay, well there will be opportunities in the future of this tutorial to adjust even more of the peaks and troughs to cut them out. So I think I'll stop there. Now I will carve more of the detail out of flowers and the leaves and the buds. For that, I will use this very fine V-shaped tool. Yes, I think I will use this fine V-shaped tool. To see. So at this point, the black is what I want to remove. What I like about this V shape is that I can taper a line and then have it come to an end, and then I get this very smooth finish. For example, and keep it thick here, and then I can get this thinner and thinner and thinner, and then it just tapers to an end. I didn't do that here, although I wish I had. That's part of printmaking, being open to the mistakes and seeing how they can be part of the image. That wasn't so bad. I really enjoyed carving with these. Schaaf Tools has a really good customer support, so if at any point I would need advice or maybe something breaks, I could easily call them and get some answers. But thankfully today they were smooth sailing. I learned a little bit about how this flat edge should be used. I really enjoyed this V-shaped to get the more finer details. I like the U-shaped, the very wide U-shape to just clean away those peaks. And if I were to move the other peaks that are closer to the image and I didn't want to risk cutting away at my leaf, for example, I could use these smaller U-shaped tools to clean that up, which I might need to do later. We'll see. I'll be honest, inking is the hardest part for me. The first print is never the best one in my experience, so I like to start with a regular piece of printer paper, nothing fancy. This will give me a lot of information about the peaks and troughs on the block, and I can clean it up before using a nicer piece of paper. So because my roller is the width of my block, and even wider than the actual image I'm printing, I don't need to have the ink be much wider than that. This bottle, the ink comes out quite thick, ink to be that thick on my lino block. So that's why I am extending it the full length of this glass palette just to thin it a little bit. Also notice that I'm not rolling back and forth, but I'm lifting it. Roll, that way I can get all the parts of the roller of the brayer. Better to have the paper on top of the block to print than it does to put the block onto the paper. And I like to have it all ready ahead of time. Especially here in Hawaii, the temperature And especially where I live, it can be kind of dry and hot. And if the ink dries fast, then I want to be prepared to print as soon as possible. Okay, so this feels about right. It's not too tacky. It makes this sort of hissing sound when I roll it. I'm going to give it a shot. Oh, yep, you can see where the peaks are picking up some ink. And since this isn't my special paper, I'm just going to willy-nilly place this on top. I don't care where it places on the paper. It's just a test. Okay, here, I just like using my hands. I can really feel where I'm pressing. You can also use official printmaking tool, print machines that really apply the pressure evenly. This is the one that I have access to today. It's just using my hands. I do have a Baron, which makes the pressing easier. You can also use a spoon. Baron is spelled B-A-R-N, if you want to look that up. Feeling around the image. I think I've got everything. I can even see a little bit of it coming through the paper. Let's see how this turns out. Okay, that's not too bad. I'm actually really loving that. I can see where I need to carve it down a little bit, maybe a little bit around the leaves as well, so I'm going to do that right now. Might make my tools a little messy. So I washed it off to the best of my ability and have started carving away some of these peaks and troughs based on this image here. I can tell that this area needs to be carved down quite a bit, a little bit in this corner. And then I just want to clean up around the leaves to make it look a little bit more clean and less noisy, less chatter. I also noticed that I don't love what this bud looks like, so I think I'm going to mess around with that as well. Okay, I feel better about this, and I'm just going to go ahead and do another print, but this time I'll do it on the nice paper. In order to make sure I line up the print in the right spot on the nicer paper, I'm going to use tape to mark where the paper is so that I know how to line it up with the print. Now I can put my paper aside, and I can put my block in the center. See if my ink didn't dry up. Oh yeah, that actually sounds nice. I wonder if you can hear this if I put the mic near you. I like to look at it closely. It's pretty good there. Now for the finger pressing. I think I'm ready. Moment of truth. Here we go. There we go. What I really like about printmaking is that you can make multiple editions of the same image, but each one is slightly unique. In order to mark the different editions of your set, you can use numbering system. I've written 2 out of 2 here in the bottom of my paper. If there's a piece within the set that you don't want to include, you can write AP, which stands for artist proof. You also should sign your editions. I've, instead of signing mine, actually marked my name with a stamp. In fact, that was a really fun, unexpected use of my eraser today. I took a Schaaf tool and I carved in my name, and that was really fun. And thank you so much for joining me on that. You can find me and my artwork at my handle @ArtByAnnaMines. And happy printmaking.